But if I take away this 8, 9 hours I'm giving them a day and I focus that on my real estate craft and growing and scaling my business, and that's what I did. In that first year that I quit the job, we bought 23 units that year. That was the most units I ever bought in 1 year. I bought 23 that units that first year being out the job, we added 23 more.
Welcome to House Rich, the real estate show. We talk to average people that do above average things in real estate. Today's guest is Lamon Woods, the CEO of Woods Family Estates. So we're going to talk to him about his real estate journey. He has about 114 units. I want to talk to him about many things: scaling the portfolio, managing a portfolio, managing tenants, and just really how he got started in the real estate game. So I appreciate you joining me on the podcast, the YouTube show. Introduce yourself to the folks, please.
What's going on? First and foremost, I want to say thank you, man, for giving me the opportunity to come on your platform and be able to help some people tonight. My name is Lamon Woods. I'm from Monroe, Louisiana. Me and my wife, Alicia Woods, we're the owners of Woods Family Estates. And we buy real estate. We go in and buy properties, kind of low-income properties. We go in and we fix them up and we put them back on the market and rent them out. We've been doing that for the last 4.5 years. And I've been out the job. I've been self-employed, running the business for like 3 years and some change. And it's been a roller coaster ride, scaling and growing and networking and just continuing to grow and build a business. A lot of mistakes along the way and just figuring it out, man. Just trying to strive for a better life and being able to upgrade the family living.
Oh, okay, awesome. So over 100 units in basically 4.5 years. So what were you doing before then? How did you get to the point where it's like, hey, I want to buy one property? Like, what were you doing before you bought your first property?
What I was doing, I was working at Coca-Cola plant first. I was a merchandiser, so I go into the stores and stock them up with the 20-ounce drinks, the Coke, the Diet Coke, the water, and different things like that. So I was a merchandiser and stuff like that before I bought the first property. And the interesting story is we was living in a property. Me and my wife was in our younger 20s. We both was making under 30 grand a year, and we was living in a property. And my wife had the idea of purchasing the property, and we was living in the property for about like a year or so, and we did some renovations ourselves and stuff like that. My wife was like, "What if you think they'll sell this property one day?" You know, when you grow up in the hood, the goal is to get out the hood. Yeah. And we was renting that property for $550, and we was in our younger 20s. We weren't making a lot of money, so that was all we can afford at the time. So I was like, "Hell no, I ain't trying to." Buy this property because it's in the hood. I want to get out the hood because that's the goal one day when you grow up in it. But my wife kept on insisting that we buy the property and stuff like that. I was like, no, I don't know. So I went home and talked to my mom and dad about it. Went to my parents' house and talked to them about it. We talked about it and stuff like that. My wife thing, it wasn't to buy the property to like be a landlord or nothing because we were still living there. But the goal was not to have to pay rent no more. My wife kept selling it to me like this. Since we did our own renovations a little bit, put our own money in it because I grew up around fixing stuff. That's what my dad does, construction. And he's been doing it for over 30 years. So like, if I had an issue, we barely called the landlord or the maintenance man. We had an issue. Most of the time, me and my dad and my wife tended to it and stuff like that. Unless it was something that went over the property on the head, then we'll let them know about it. But she kept insisting that we buy the property. Like I said, I talked to my parents about it. I talked to my best friend about it. And she kept insisting. So we finally did it. One day I was like, all right, let's do it. Well, it's interesting. Have we ended up getting enough money that year with the income tax? Because we was in the lower income threshold. So income tax time was like the re-up time. So we paid my taxes with her taxes. And man, we bought that property outright. And we only had like 600 and some books left. But, it was like, man, like, because, you go from living paycheck to paycheck to getting your taxes. Now you kind of like, I'm up for a little while. So I got a little money. But then, I'm 25 years old. Yeah, 25 years old at the time, and we go spend that money on the property. So it was like, man, now I'm back at $600 and some dollars. But what I learned in that process was the compound effect because we didn't have to pay that $550 in rent every month. Yeah. So now, instead of spending that money paying rent, we were storing that money. So our savings account started to build up and things like that. So that's when I was kind of, at the time I didn't know it, but I kind of understood like the compound effect of taking a small amount of money. And if you compound it every month, it grows and stuff like that. So that's how the real estate journey kind of started with that first property. We bought it just not to have to pay rent no more.
Oh, okay, awesome. So yeah, you bought your first, so you bought the property cash? You're saying you bought it outright?
Yeah, the seller wanted, we was good tenants. We paid our rent for the year and a half we was there, we didn't have a lot of maintenance calls. So my wife asked the property manager how much did he think his investor want for it. So the lady came back and it was just the grace of God. She just said she'd take 15,000 for it cash. You know, she'd take 15,000 for it cash, and we ended up putting up the money from the income tax and we purchased it outright.
Okay, well, yeah, I've never heard anybody buying a house with their tax return base. That's awesome. People buy all sorts of stuff. I've never heard somebody actually buying a whole house cash for that.
Yeah, man. And one of the things that scared me, but that changed my life, man. I like appreciate my wife for bringing that to me, even though I was against it, and just stepping out on faith, making that decision at 25, that young, you know, that kind of changed my life. And so that kind of started the dreams of building an empire.
Cool. So what inspired house number two? Because you said your goal was just to stop renting. So you bought the home and now you were stacking money. So what was like, hey, let me go get property number two?
So we started having children, and we were standing in the hood when we bought that first property. So my wife came back, said a year later with another idea. Hey, it's time for us. We got kids now. It's time for us to move in a better area, better school zones, and different things like that. So I was like, oh man, here we go with that again. She talked me into it. So we got an FHA loan in a property that we reside in now. So like we moved out that property, we bought the property we reside in now with an FHA loan, 3.5% down. We put that money down and stuff like that. We have been saving from not having to pay rent at the first property. And then we moved into that property, and then we rented that property out and stuff like that. It was something interesting that happened when I rented that property out. Because I was at working, my wife was at work, and I put it for me and my dad. My wife fixed it up. We painted it, put the floors down when we moved out of it. And then I put a for rent sign in the yard, man, and I was getting calls all day at work. And I was like, man, I can't believe it. Like, I couldn't believe that people was calling me to rent the place and stuff like that. I remember texting my wife at work, like my phone been blowing up all day for people to rent the place and stuff like that. And when I was making only $800 and some dollars every 2 weeks when I was working a job. So when I rented that property out, I got a $575 rent check and I got a $400 deposit. And I was like, man, this is more than my paycheck.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, so that's when the research about real estate, I started digging into it, listening to YouTube, bigger pockets. I started listening to, I don't think Todd Millionaire podcast around it, but I just started listening to a lot of different guys on YouTube called This Success. I started listening to a lot of different things, learning about real estate because of it just blew me away that I was getting an $800 and some dollar check every 2 weeks, but I just got $975. And all I did was tell people, hey, don't tear up my house. And I just signed the lease. I didn't know what I was doing. Nothing of the kind. I went and got a lease from my uncle Doug because he had rent houses. I went and got a lease from him, and I got that $975, and it kind of just changed my life.
That's what Clicker was like. I'm going to start building this empire at this point. Is that?
Yeah. That was the motivation, what inspired and stuff like that. So as I went on my journey, we was residing in our new house, and we was renting that house out. Tenants was paying rent. We was collecting that money, saving it, and stuff like that. And I didn't have it in the LLC or none of that. We were just getting $575 a month. I had a safe that I used to take the money and put it in, and we'll put it up and stuff like that. And so I started researching. Like I said, I went to the school, YouTube University. That I ain't got no student loan debt. That's what I like to tell people. So when I was at work, being a merchandiser, one thing I did like about the job, we had time in our work truck. I listened to podcasts while I'm merchandising the store, doing my work orders and stuff like that. I'll be on YouTube at nighttime researching and stuff like that. And I just pulled in real estate, and one thing came across was wholesaling. And I was like, original goal, me and my wife talked about, what if we can buy one property a year cash, like we did that first one? What if we can do one a year? Because I grew up where borrowing money, debt was like theft. Like, you know, you grew up in the hood, they like, hey, don't borrow that money from them folks. Don't do this, don't do that. So like I went into borrowing money and stuff at that point. So I went on this like just rampage of learning wholesaling because I was going to take the rent money I was collecting from the first property. The original plan was take that money and take that proceeds from wholesaling and put that together and go purchase a property. And then we got our income taxes, put some of that money with it, and then go purchase a property outright cash and fix it up. And we did that. I found another property. That was the third property. I found another property for $6,000. We bought it cash, and we were gonna fix it up, me, my dad, and my wife, like we did the first one. But what I had ended up realizing, I didn't have the money to buy it and fix it up. Like it was gonna cost me too much money and stuff like that.
Okay, and
so I ended up meeting.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I said I ended up meeting the guy. I had got a property, so I did some marketing and stuff like that, and I ended up getting a property on a contract to wholesale. So I got the property on a contract, and then my wife drove all the way to West Monroe, the other side of town, to the hotel to meet the lady to sign the contract. I got that property on the contract. Then I posted some signs in front of Home Depot, Lowe's on the highway, and I posted on Craigslist and Facebook. And I was leaving. I ended up getting a second job as well throughout that process to get more money to be able to buy properties cash. So I had a day job and a night job. Because the goal was to raise as much money to buy property cash. So I called the sign, and I ended up meeting a guy that I spoke about a lot on every podcast I've done, and every time I get to talk about it. So I met a guy named Scooter High. I called the sign, and this young guy answered the phone, and I was like, "Hey, you buy houses?" Because I seen a "We Buy Houses" sign now, and I had the house on the contract to wholesale. And the guy answered the phone, young. He was like, "Yeah, I buy houses." I was like, man, I looked at the phone because he sounded so young. I was like, "This dude lying, man." So I was like, he pulled up on me in a big truck. We ended up talking, and it was just a blessing from God, man. That guy didn't buy that house, but he stood outside and gave me $1 million worth of game. Me and him stood outside and talked for like 2 hours. And he had 70 properties at the time. He had an office. He had 3 employees. He gave me the contact to his banker. He was telling me how his systems and how he growing the business and stuff. And I took the information from him. As soon as I got in the truck, I called my wife, and man, I went on a relentless researching path for the next 4 months of learning everything me and that guy talked about. That we talked about leverage, OPM, debt. We talked about so many things that I never heard before because I didn't grow up in a household where people was talking about that stuff.
So like I said, I know he gave you a lot of stuff, but if you could say like maybe one of the 1 or 2 most important things you probably learned from in that first 4 months.
What I learned from the first 4 months of me doing research.
No, what you say with the Scooter, you know, he gave you a lot of information, but maybe if you get what are maybe like 1 or 2 things that probably one of the 2 most important things that you learned from like in that during that time frame that you started to research.
I learned about relationships, and I learned about OPM, the power of OPM, how you can take off and grow and scale. Because my mindset with cash, it was going to take me longer to get their cash because I make less than 30,000. My wife makes less than 30,000. I got a second job, and I'm trying to do all this stuff, fix it up myself. So I learned about the power of OPM and leveraging money, and I also leveraging money and leveraging people as well.
Okay, what do you mean by leveraging people?
Well, instead of delegating, instead of me doing the work and doing the stuff like that, even though I didn't use it at the time, it still took me till I got about 40-some units to really implement it. But it was in the back of my mind because of he had said that that's how he grew and scaled. When he had 10 for a long time, for years, and when he let go and started delegating and bringing team systems in place and built a team, he went from 10 to 70, and then he went from 70 to 140 in a short amount of time because he started to delegate and outsource more. So that was something that was in the back of my mind when we talked. So I said the power of OPM and delegation was 2 more of the most important topics that me and him talked about that day we stand in front of that house that I was trying to host it.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then so how do you get to the point where you're like, hey, it's time to leave the job? Like, how do you get to that point?
Oh, so I had always said, so I was working the job and we was buying properties. That's when we started to do. So that first house I bought, the appraisal came back at like 40,000. So the bank was like, I went to the bank that Scooter recommended me to his banker. I went to set up a meeting with him. Funny story was I went in the bathroom at work at Walmart. I changed clothes, put on my shirt and tie, everything. Went outside, got in my work truck and went to the bank to take the meeting with the banker that he told me about. Went in there, presented myself and different things like that. I think about I had already been researching, so I didn't go in the bank saying like I want to do this, I want to do that. 2 of the most important things I had already owned some, so I had ownership because I owned 2 properties. I owned the $6,000 property and the first property we bought, and I owned the property we live in now. So I had ownership, I had good credit, I had 2 jobs at the time. And I went into the bank talking to them like, what type of loan product y'all offer? What is it y'all, what y'all can do for me and different things like that. So they sent the appraiser out to appraise that house. The house came back appraised at like 36,000, I want to say. And I was able to borrow 80% of that. 80% of that is $28,500. And I was able to take that money in collateral, and I kept recycling that money, buy a house, cash, line of credit, fix it, refinance it, and kept on. And so I learned other strategies, but that was the initial strategy right there. And when I was working a job, I think we had got up to like 20-some properties. I was meeting appraisers, talking to the HVAC technicians. You know, I'm talking to a guy about doing floors at one of my rentals, while me and my dad, my wife do floors at another one and stuff like that. Because I started buying properties at the time. I was up to like 20-some, a little bit on the 30. And I had told my wife one day when my job started to compromise my dreams, I was leaving and betting on myself. When when I couldn't meet the appraisal, when I couldn't meet the
Yeah.
HVAC guy, when I couldn't do the stuff I was doing at work, like when they started to compromise my dreams, I was just gonna bet on myself and dip out. That's what I did.
Yeah. At some point, you're losing money being at the job at that point.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, but it was still nervous because I talked to the bank like, hey, my banker was like, hey, you the first person that ever asked, can they quit their job? I called the meeting with her. I went to sit down where I talked to her about leaving. Can I still get finance? I was scared as hell. I didn't know if I would still be able to qualify for financing. I ain't know none of that stuff, man. I was just scared. I was worried about it, but I just felt like it was time. And I was like, hey, I don't got enough units right now. But if I take away this 8-9 hours I'm giving them a day and I focus that on my real estate craft, growing and scaling my business. And that's what I did. In that first year that I quit the job, we bought 23 units that year. That was the most units I ever bought in 1 year. I bought 23 that units. That first year being out the job, we added 23 more to what we already had.
Oh, okay, wow. And then so how do you actually go about, purchasing a home with no job? Because I know I work in the traditional financial world. Typically that's like if you don't got a job, you can't get any finances. How do you go about getting financing if you don't have like a W-2 or a regular 9 to 5?
Well, I think the first thing that helped in my situation, I had a track record. I had did like 25, someone I say it was roughly like 28 before I quit the job. I had already proven that I can buy them, fix them up, and rent them out. So I had the leases, I had the cash flow in the bank. I had already proved that and stuff like that. Having a good track, I had good credit, and my wife was still employed. So I think I had built kind of solid relationship with my bank before I even quit, and I had a track, some kind of like a track record with the 20-some doors and stuff like that. And another thing, I'm working with small commercial lenders that's not heavily regulated by the FDIC. These guys want a loan on real estate. They want investors to come in up so I can pay them interest every month and different things like that. So it's commercial products. You get a 15-year, you get a 5-year installment loan. So you get every 5 years you have to refinance. Every 5 years you have to refinance, and the interest rate can't go over a certain amount and stuff like this. So it's just commercial loan products. And when you're dealing with small banks with commercial loan products, that helps you stay financed and stuff like that because they want a loan on deals. So without the job, you can get financed with those small local banks.
Okay, so for the most part, I mean, they're looking at your track record, but they're also looking at the collateral to make sure it's a money making thing for them essentially.
Yeah, they underwriting the deal that they did. So when I go to a bank, I take them everything. I take them comps. I take them, hey, a scope of work. I'm doing these can lights. I'm doing vinyl plank floors. They're gonna cost me $1.97 a square foot. I'm using this type of paint. I do all the walls gray, all the trim white. I use these type of ceramic tile in the bathroom. Like I'm creating a detailed scope of work and I'm sending all that to them. So it's making a bank job easier. You're making an appraiser job easier when I send over comps, right? I'm running my own comps. That's helping the appraiser out. I'm underwriting my own deal. I'm showing the bank, this is my insurance quote. This is my taxes for the year. This is how much rent I'm going to make. This how much, just everything. It's just a lot of different stuff that's up in there. But I send all that over to the bank and I basically underwriting the deal myself, and it makes it easier on the bank. So now all they got to do is go present it to the loan company and get back at me when it's time to get the appraisal to get the loan.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like I said, the bank wants to lend you money. That's how they make money. So the easier you make it for them, the more likely you are to get the loan. So you basically put them in a position where they sort of can't decline the loan. Or if it was going to be a decline, you would know beforehand because you already got all your ducks in a row essentially. And then
so I just underwrite everything.
Yeah, and so when I heard you on the previous kind of mastermind you talked about 100% financing deals. You talk about how you go about getting those type of deals where it's 100% financing on the property. Yeah.
So what I do is 3 different ways. But say if you had a property for sale and I go to the bank, establish an unsecured line of credit. That's based off your income and credit score. The income and credit score, you find that you get those funds, and then you got a collateral line of credit, like a commercial line of credit based off the equity in your properties. They package up some equity in your properties and they give you a drawdown line of credit against the equity. You got this unsecured line of credit. It's only based off income and credit score. and you put that together, and now I can go out and buy houses cash. I can buy, say, if I got 80,000 between them two lines of credit, I can buy a house from you for 40,000, need $40,000 rehab, but I know the ARV is 120. I can fix it up, get it rented out, and I can go back to the bank and refinance the 80. One of my banks do 80, one of my banks do 85%. I can pull out my capital out the deal, pay my line of credit back off to a zero balance. Now I got debt on the property that the tenant is paying me rent and paying down every month. So now I got nothing in there. I got Z. That's the bird strategy. And people, before that name came out, I've been doing that. And I'm pretty sure that name was out, but I had been doing that. And another way I do cross collateralization. So basically, cross collateralization is I'm taking equity from one property and I'm pledging that equity to buy the existing property. So say if I got a property, I pay 40,000 for it, but it's worth 65,000. It's a difference in between there. It's worth 65 and I only got 40. Now you take that 25,000, subtract the bank 15%, and I need 15% to cover the down payment for the next property. Out of that $25,000 spread, the bank will take the 15% out of that equity in that house A to buy house B for me. So I don't have to come out of down payment.
So they put like a lien on the property, or?
Yeah, they cross collateral the property. So they cross collateral property. Got one mortgage. It's kind of like they secure another mortgage against it, and they use them funds to buy the next property.
Okay, and then you can either leave it there, or I guess pay it off, and then keep and basically just keep the process rolling, essentially.
Yeah, so I buy property A with equity, leverage that equity to buy property B. Buy property B with equity, leverage that equity to buy property C. And you just keep on snowball. So I do it like that. I do the bird strategy and I do cross collateralization. And then say if you got a house and I'm buying it for say 50,000, it's worth 100, and it's already fixed up and rented out. I call those cash flow. Now I'm buying cash flow. You call me and say, hey, Lamon, this house already rented out. I got appraised on it less than a year old. My banker used it because the appraisal less than a year old. And I buy this house and it's rented out for $800 a month. I can tell my bank, hey, I want to add this house to a loan. Now, say I got a package of houses. I only owe 100,000, but the package of houses worth 200,000. I can add that house I'm buying from you for 60,000 to that loan. So now that loan goes from 100 to 160 plus closing costs, and I don't have to put no money down because that loan value and them houses worth 200. See what I'm saying? So I got the spread there where I can just get that house from you and it just adds to that loan. So now that loan comes out to be, say, 60,000 for purchase and $3,000 for closing costs. Now that loan comes out to be instead of I had $100,000. I owed $100,000 on these houses. The ARV was 200,000, but I bought a house from you for 60 with $3,000 closing costs. So now my loan balance. Now I got 7 houses in that one loan, and my loan balance is 163. It goes from 100 to 163.
Got you. And so, how do you go about finding these properties with all this equity in it to begin with? Like, what is kind of your strategy when you're identifying or finding properties to purchase?
Strategy was just driving for dollars in the beginning. We were driving for dollars and networking and stuff like that. But the biggest tool for me was networking. You know, I bought a lot of property from my mentor, Scooter. He was downsizing. He had 140. And I joined the local real estate group and met a lot of guys that were big landlords, and they started to downsize. And if I'm going to lunch with these guys, all of us go self-employed, run our real estate business. So they see a young guy like me coming up, who the first person they going to call when they ready to downsize and shift some deals is me. So it was just networking, driving for dollars, and out hustling, calling wholesalers. Like I used to make it my business every Friday. I'll sit down and go through my phone and text wholesalers. Hey, what's up? How y'all doing? Boom, boom, boom. And guess what? If you speaking to them on a regular outside of just when you want a deal and stuff like that, you treating them like a human being instead of a business transaction. When they get a deal on a contract, who one of the first person they're going to reach out to? Me, because I'm one of the last people on their mind because I just texted them last Friday. And stuff like that. So we just out hustling, meeting landlords, talking to wholesalers, and driving for dollars and just hustling, trying to find the deals.
Okay. Thank you. And then so as you're building your portfolio, how do you go about like managing all these tenants? Because you have like 50 tenants, 70, 60 tenants, 70 tenants. That could be I don't know 10, 20, 30 problems a month. Or how do you go about managing the tenants and all the potential issues that may pop up?
Just getting it done, figuring it out, man. It was a headache, taking phone calls, renovating properties, like from everything in this process, man. We did everything from being on the roof in the cold, from being on the roof in 100-degree weather. Me and my dad repiping the house. Me and my wife putting down floors. Like me, my dad, my wife, and my uncle, we done renovated the house from top to bottom. I'd have been on the phone fixing the floor and talking to tenants on the phone. Like it
Right.
was just like, hey, I ain't have a job. I had a
Uh-huh.
family to take care of, and I ain't make no excuses. Because, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, the goal was to upgrade the family living. So I just
Yeah.
dealt with whatever came up. And these properties are low income areas and cheap properties. So you're dealing with a bunch of crap. Sometimes it's not even the property, it's the tenant.
Yeah.
This is that. But it was just something I chose to do. Do it get frustrating? Did I like to deal with it all the time? No, but like I said, I didn't have a job and I had a family to take care of. So I just did what I had to do. But
Uh-huh.
just made it work, man. But like I say, just did everything in this process, like from before we started to get enough money to outsource this stuff. We did all that work. We managed all them tenants. Before we hired an office assistant. Now I got an assistant that works in my office every day and stuff like that. That manages the property, to run other errands for me and stuff like that. But in the beginning, it was just figuring it out, man, and doing everything you had to do.
So, like I said, you just kind of tackling the issues as they came. Did you eventually like put certain systems in place, or would you just kind of like tackle the issues as they come until you kind of hired somebody else to actually manage everything? Not that you were managing it, but to kind of do all the stuff that you were doing in the first place.
Yeah, so after a while, I went to a landlord conference in Arkansas one week, and they just talked about systems and stuff like that. I was like, man, I got more property than a lot of these guys in here. But my mentor Scooter was always on me about systems, and me and my bros talk about it. And I had like 50 some units at the time, and I was like, man, if I put this in place, I can go to the next level. So that's when my dad was doing full-time plumbing with his business partner, and me and him having a combo, and I was like, what you think about come working with me full time and stuff like that? At first he went with it. He was like, I just help you and stuff like that. Then like a month later, he was just like, he'll do it. So he
Mhm.
came on full time instead of me and him doing stuff after work. Him when he get off work coming helping me, and me and my uncle was at the property throughout the day. When my daddy got done doing plumbing with his business partner, he'll come help us. Now I transition from what my uncle and my dad was together every day working on the properties, and I can be out looking for more deals. I was out looking for more deals and stuff like
Okay.
that. And then I hired a lady to take my phone calls. She just started taking me and my wife phone calls from my Google Voice number when tenants called and stuff like that. I was paying her a flat fee a month. That didn't work out. So I
Mhm.
tried that. And then we hired another lady part-time and stuff like that. That didn't work out. And we just kept scaling up and growing. And then it got to the point where we just hired last December. We made the decision to hire the full-time assist. She like the office manager. She does property management, lease
Okay.
units. She go to eviction court. She runs errands. She just kind of do whatever I needed to do that day.
Okay. Okay. And so you mentioned eviction court. Can you talk about the eviction process? Obviously, something that no landlord wants to deal with for many reasons. It's unfortunate you got to evict somebody, but how do you actually? Can you talk about how that process where you make decisions like, hey, it's time to actually, unfortunately evict this tenant?
So what I do in our market, like I said, we're dealing with lower income properties and stuff like that. Yeah, we try to work with them as long as we can. I know when my business bills due and when the bank call, when I need to make money, deposits in a bank and stuff like that. So we kind of like work with them until it gets to the point where we just finally decide they ain't gonna pay. We'll make a decision. My market it costs $140. You go down to the courthouse, you take a check, take the lease, and you get a court date. Typically the court dates like 2 to 3 weeks out. And sometimes when the marshals go serve the notice, the tenants will move out because they know they finna go get evicted. Or
Okay.
sometimes they'll stay there and you go file a notice, you get a court date. Say the court date is gonna be no longer than a month. You go to court, if they don't show, you automatically warn the judgment. But if they do show, you just got proof of concept that they didn't pay the rent, and the
Okay.
judge just grants the eviction and stuff like that. So it's not like a long drawn out process in my market.
Okay. So Louisiana is pretty much it's more of a landlord friendly state.
Uh, if you want to Yeah, I would say it's just basically like, hey, they ain't paid the rent. The judge ain't really going back and forth with them and stuff like that. So yeah, if you want to look, I never looked at it like that, but if you want to say that, then yeah, I guess so.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Now, how do you go about like budgeting or kind of managing like capital expenditures for all these properties? I mean, you have like 100 properties. Like, how do you go about budgeting for like major expenses on all these properties?
Uh, well, what the cheat code for me is, so I think I'll say the cheat code for me is knowing how to do stuff myself in the beginning, and know how some people have to hire a contractor. Say the hot water, some people call it a boiler or whatever.
Uh-huh.
In my market, we call it a hot water tank.
Gotcha.
Typically, that runs you $500. In my market, the install gonna run you about 350 to 500, and the hot water tank itself gonna run you like $500. So you say all in, if you have a capital expenditure like that, costs you $1,000. The difference is with me, I got guys on payroll that know how to do that. So if a hot water tank go out, it costs me $500 in a day's worth of work that I was gonna pay anyway. See what I'm saying? So I cut down my capital expenditures with like not having to sub out. Like a lot of people use contractors and stuff in their business. I don't have to do that and stuff like that because it's just like I got guys on payroll that's around the clock doing these things every day. So what it typically costs them to replace a whole roof and different things like that, it won't cost me because I can get my guys to do it at a way cheaper cost. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? So that's how I kind of handle the capital expenditures, stuff like that.
Okay. And so obviously you're super I was super efficient at this, but so what am I trying to say? So right now you can look at a property and walk into it and say, hey, this is going to cost, I don't know, $5,000 to renovate. But before you kind of got to that point, how did you kind of evaluate what renovations may cost, and kind of what tips would you give to somebody that's new in the game when they're evaluating a property to say, hey, should I buy this property or should I not buy the property, or how or maybe tips for a new investor on how to evaluate, what the after repair value may be of a property, if that made sense.
After repair value, I always tell recruiters, new investors, talk to realtors, talk to people like me, seasoned guys that own properties in the area. Go on the tax assessor website and look up people that own properties in them areas and see if you can trace down their number. And you can just call them up, be like, hey, I see you own properties in the area. I'm interested in buying one. You got a kind of idea of what your last appraisal was on your address, different things like that, networking and just talking to people and stuff like that. I see, and talking to realtors, it's free to call a realtor on the phone. Cash out some money, $20,
Gotcha.
take them to lunch or something to get some comps and stuff like that. Talk to good wholesalers and get some comps. Tell them, hey, I want to be on your buyers list. I'll give you $100 if you can go run comps on these 3 properties for me and stuff like that there. So, and in the beginning, I didn't know nothing about renovation. I knew how to fix, like, growing up around my uncles and my dads, but I didn't worry about none of that because I just go get my dad. My dad got over 30 years of construction knowledge. Like, hey, Dad, I'm looking at this house. Hey, when you get off work, I'm going to come get you. We're going to go look at it before I go put an offer in. So we'll just go look at it and walk it. Hey, it need a new roof. It need a new HVAC system. They stole all the copper out, like most of the time they do in the vacant houses in the rental hood. Still all the copper and the electrical and stuff out. So like we'll just go walk it like that, and I buy it, and we'll just fix it. We'll do the electrical. We'll do the plumbing. We were just fixing it ourselves. So I didn't have a lot in the beginning. For years and years, I didn't have a lot of expenses on the labor side. I give my dad a certain amount of money. I had a job, he had a job, my wife had a job. I give him some money, he went tripping, and we'll just do all the work ourselves. So I didn't have a lot of overhead costs when it came to labor and stuff.
Oh, okay, thank you.
But to answer
Now,
your question, I was just going to get my dad, and we walked the property, and I used his knowledge until I got better and better at walking on myself and using my own knowledge.
okay, yeah, so kind of like you touched on earlier, just your network. Obviously, your dad is part of your network, but yeah, talking to people that know more than you basically is kind of one of the cheat codes there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and,
yeah.
and then so for the properties you have, how do you manage them? Do you put them all in like LLCs? Do you put them all under the Woods Family Estate LLC, or how do you go about classifying the properties? Some people say get an LLC
And
for every property and all that.
yeah, no, we don't do it. So in the beginning, it was just Woods family and stuff like that. But we started to get so many, and now we accumulate millions of real estate. We just break it up 10 to 15 per LLC, and we put them in there. The high equity ones in one LLC, the low equity and stuff. The early payoff ones, the ones we owe less than this amount of money on in the LLC. And it's just kind of like different how we kind of put it in like different categories and stuff like that. But typically, the rule of thumb, if you ask my attorney, Gene Hastings or Jasmine McConnell, they'll tell you the rule of thumb in our market, they always suggest no more than 10 or 15 properties in the LLC.
Okay, okay. Thank you. And I saw on your going through your IG page, I think it was like in February-ish time frame, you purchased about like 19 units at once. Was that
Yeah.
a were those 19 single family homes? Was that like a big building? You talk about that that project?
And that project was 19 single family. It's 19. It's 19. It's 18 single family homes in one community, and the 19 houses on the other side of the highway. So the deal, it was in the
It was
houses.
18 plus 19 or 19 total?
It was 19 total,
Okay.
18 in one community. It's in
Okay,
a 4
okay,
stop
okay.
sign radius. So if you got 2 stop signs on the right hand side, you got 2 stop signs on the left hand side. All the houses is divided up by 4 lots, and all the 4 lots are joined together. All the
Gotcha.
4 lots are together. So it's like they all single families, but it's crazy. It's like walking up into your own little neighborhood. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
just a
yeah.
whole little neighborhood. We can park the trucks in the middle of the lot, and we can just walk. We just walk from house to house, and they like this far apart. So that was
Gotcha.
one of our one of our biggest deals that we closed at the time. So we bought a 19 unit package deal, and I did some editing and video. That was a big accomplishment for us. And I bought that property the same way, used cross collateralization. I borrowed some equity out of like 12 other properties that I had to pledge to put the down payment on that property. And we bought they say buy the whole block. Like, yeah, we bought the whole neighborhood. So we bought the whole neighborhood.
Cool. And so was that 19 separate transactions, or that's just one, like you just signed in one?
No, it was all from one owner. The owner just had the property divided up by 2 LLCs. It was all from one owner. We bought all 19 from one owner, and that was it. One transaction.
Okay. And so what's the end game? Do you have like, I want 200 units? Do I want a certain number of cash flow, or just I'm gonna keep going till I can't go anymore? Like what's the end game?
Man, to be honest, I can say now at this point in life, I'm a businessman. When I ain't got it all figured out. I ain't know. I was just hustling. I'm 33. I was just hustling. I just knew I was gonna be a young boss one day, and I was gonna figure it out some type of way. So I didn't have an end goal or nothing like that. As I grew older, now we purchasing different, we renovating different. We different systems are being implemented and stuff like that. So now I'm kind of at the question you just asked me. I'm kind of sitting down now and doing that, refining my goals, like what I want this to look like, what I want 5 years from now to look like, how much equity I want to have, how much cash I want to have. Do I want 15-year loans? Do I want 20-year loans? Do I want to continue to buy in the rental hood, or do I want to kind of diversify and buy some stuff that I'm not going to make as much as cash flow as you'll make in a rental hood? You're talking about dealing with properties with $200 mortgages on them that you can pay. That's pocket change. You can pay that if somebody didn't pay the rent.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So now I'm kind of, as I'm getting older, I'm thinking about a lot of this stuff, man. But to be honest, in the beginning, shit, it wasn't no end game. It was just hustling. You just gonna hustle and do what you got to do. So that's all it was doing and stuff like that. But I'm getting older and I'm getting wiser, and I'm kind of finally figuring out all the way what I'm doing. So I'm kind of like doing some different things now.
Okay.
But to answer your question, I'm still working on it right there. I'm not. So I know one of the biggest goals is me and my wife just not having to work unless we want to work and have enough income in to support us and the kids and do the things that we want to do. So I guess I can say that's number one of the goals, doing it as we always want to come and go as we please, not feeling like we had to do it at that time.
And so I know, like I said, I know you started. It was YouTube University. It was podcasts. It was your network. What do you do right now to learn more? Is it just not that you know everything now, but are you just learning from yourself doing stuff, or how are you advancing your real estate education still to this day?
Networking. I'll travel. I go to seminars. Me and Andre and Todd and Henry and them did the one in Arkansas, being around those guys in different bigger markets than mine. So they come in with different ideas, and I'm coming with ideas of how I run my business. Networking. I got another circle of mentors, like a guy named Steven. He owns over 500 some units, some commercial, some residential, taking different guys, big investors in the area that I met through Scooter, reaching out to those guys myself without me going through him or with him, and taking those guys out to lunch. One of them is a developer. He built the whole subdivision, and his wife a realtor. So they buy them, they renovate them, and just networking and investing in myself. Like I say, traveling, if it's something like I want to go to, earn your leisure, different things like that, I go and stuff like that. So that's how I continue to advance and invest in myself.
Okay, awesome. Like I said, yeah, appreciate your time. Appreciate all the knowledge. Like I said, it's very interesting story because, like I said, 4.5 years ago, you owned no properties, and now you got over 100 properties. 100 properties, 100 tenants, and all that. And so, yeah, very interesting story. Like I said, basically, nothing was really given to you. Like I said, you was in the properties, working with your hands, working with your pops, to build this empire. Um, and so the last question I ask everybody on the podcast. Let's say you had, I give you $1 million. You have a week to spend it on something real estate related. What would you do with it?
We could spend some real estate related. Man, I'll probably pay a bunch of my stuff off. And now I got debt free cash flow coming in, and so I probably do something like that. That's the plan here after a while, to start doing that right there, working backwards and paying some of it off. So that's probably what I do.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. And so, where can the folks find you? You do any mentorships? Like, how can folks connect with you?
At 1-800-Hustler on Instagram.
Okay.
I don't do mentorships or coaching and nothing like that, but I have people DM me and stuff like that. I work with a lot of people through the DM. I ain't no Instagram celebrity, man. Somebody DM me, I DM them back,
All right.
and I try to help them with the knowledge that I got best way as possible. So shoot me a DM if you got any questions from the podcast and different things. But I want to say this before we go, man. I came from making $26,874.33 a year, you know.
Uh-huh.
And now I own millions in real estate and stuff like this. So I say to anybody, anything possible. Don't listen to that. You gotta have systems. You gotta have this figured out. Contractors gonna rip you out, man. Don't listen to all that shit. Get out, bet on yourself, and just work hard, bro. If you show up one day and work hard, one day your dreams gonna meet the hard work, and it's gonna come together and work out for you. I ain't know none of that. I depended on my wife, my dad, and my uncle when I started this, and we just figured it out. And when things came up, we just continued to figure it out. It's a marathon. So I just say, like, I'm living proof that, and I'm not the only person, but I'm living proof that you can come from making it to doing what I'm doing today. So it's possible. Just going out and just getting it done.
Thank you. I could have done a better outro to this podcast than that. So, I appreciate it. There's actually no outro to the podcast, so it is over right now. That's it. Thank you.
I appreciate